So one of the things that happens when you have any sort of a social media presence, an online presence, is people reach out with all kinds of questions. I get a fair amount, and some of those questions are customer service questions or sales questions. Maybe the client's unhappy after a shoot, or they're not paying you when they should pay you, a variety of things. But there is something every one of these questions has in common with one another. There's one thing you can do, one step you can take that will remedy the vast majority of these problems. The step is pretty straightforward. Talk to your customers. I don't mean text, I don't mean email, I mean have an actual conversation with your customers. On the phone is okay, in person is better, but I do the majority of mine over the phone. Now let's hit some bullet points under this overall umbrella of talk to your customers. That conversation has to be meaningful, and you have to be trying to get something out of that conversation. In order to get what you need out of this conversation, you have to build as much of a relationship as you possibly can in the short time you got with your customer. But the conversation should be geared towards finding out as much as you possibly can about your customer to make sure that you're setting clear expectations for the shoot. You want to make sure that you're both on the same page when it comes to what they should expect out of the shoot and what you're going to provide with the shoot. By the time you're done with this conversation, you should be able to repeat back to that customer exactly what they expect to get out of this shoot. And that should fall clearly within whatever guidelines or policies or procedures you have in place that you've clearly communicated to that customer. Now, a couple key things you want to go over in this conversation. Number one, payment. It should be crystal clear to both parties involved by the time you're done with this conversation exactly how much the session costs, exactly what they're getting out of their payment. Is there a deposit? When is that deposit due? When is the final payment due? And what payment method are they going to be using? Are you delivering before or after their final payment? You want to make sure all these things are crystal clear by the time you're done with that conversation. For me personally, I always get a deposit and I always make sure it's paid before I ever hit the shutter button on the camera. And I always get paid in full before I deliver the final photos. Now keep in mind, all these details should also be in your agreement. But you want to make sure you vocally go over these things with your customers, because how many times do you see people just skim through an agreement and sign? I've seen a lot of folks that have good agreements in place still run into these same problems with their clients and still come to the internet asking for advice. Having this conversation ahead of time and have it reflect exactly what's in your paper agreement or your digital agreement is way more powerful than just that agreement alone. Number two, delivery and edits. When will you be delivering their final photos? And what kind of edits are included in their package? How much do you charge for edits above and beyond the scope of what you have laid out here with this conversation that matches what's in your agreement? If someone gets a hold of you and they could see their tattoo for every one of the photos, they decide they don't like that too and they want to edit it out, how much are you charging for that? If you're not charging, you need to make sure that's spelled out in your actual agreement or they know you're doing them a favor. For me, myself, my standard sessions, I do basic edits in the photos. I do a little bit of color grading, take 2 to 3 minutes per photo. Anything above and beyond that when it comes to skin retouching, getting rid of flyaways, getting rid of tattoos, anything additional I charge for. Here's a bonus tip when it comes to delivery of photos. I don't ever promise sneak peeks. If I do sneak peeks, I let it be a pleasant surprise. I don't want someone nagging me the entire time after a session. When can they see the photos? When can they see the photos? When can they see the photos? I usually give myself 2 weeks for delivery. I usually deliver within a week. I oftentimes do sneak peeks, but not always. It just depends on what my schedule is like. But I always under-promise, over-deliver. It's better to blow the expectations out of the water than it is to set high expectations and not be able to rise up and meet them. Lastly, in these conversations, don't compromise on your terms. Meaning if you have policies and terms in place, my recommendation is not to break those. Everybody can give you a reason or a story on why you should compromise on your terms for them. But if you're going to start doing that for everybody, why have terms in the first place? The terms are put in place to set expectations. The expectations are there for a reason. I'm assuming you've come up with these expectations and these guidelines and these rules because you found that's what you can actually achieve. By you compromising on your terms, you're really opening yourself up to a lot of trouble with your clients. You're the professional. You need to maintain control of this relationship. You need to stand by your terms in this relationship. You have to have the ability to say no and stand by that no once you say it. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more videos, and we'll catch you next time.